1994 Toyota MR2 to driving a 2007 Porsche Cayman is a little bit of an odd experience for a number of reasons. Now, let me tell you, the MR2 is a car that I wanted for a very long time before I bought it. It's mid-engine, it's kind of a little bit more exotic. So when Sid called us up and was like, hey, do you want to drive my Porsche Cayman, or his girlfriend's Porsche Cayman, I was like, I'm all ears. Even though it is the automatic, let's just get that out of the way. That isn't the point of this video. The point of this video is to show you guys what an incredible driving experience you can actually get for under $30,000. Porsche Caymans, especially a base one like this, are just known for their reliability. Porsches are bulletproof. So let's go for a drive, see how we like the Porsche Cayman. So before we get too deep into it, this car does have a couple modifications, straight up. So at the front, it's got the Tech Art aftermarket bumper. Makes it look really mean and aggressive, especially when lining this up next to a Boxster. I mean, now with that bumper, they're in a whole different league. It's also got 19-inch Forged Star wheels all around with the Porsche center caps. As you can hear back there, it basically has a straight-through muffler system from the headers back. No catalytic converters or anything like that. Between 2,000 and 3,000 RPM, here, let me shift down. It's very droney, very droney. But as long as you're above like 3,000 RPM, it sounds phenomenal. Every time I get behind the wheel of a Porsche, it's not very often, but when we do, the essence of just a naturally aspirated flat six out of Germany is one of the best things. So right now it's sitting at about 260 horsepower versus the stock about 240, 245. It does have an ECU flash to thank for that. So what Sid's actually got down here is he's got a little button that you can change and it adjusts the throttle response. So right now, being a naturally aspirated engine and being a very finely engineered German automobile, right out the gate, the throttle response is already just phenomenal. But you hit a button and the light turns green and you would not believe the changes that it actually makes to the driving experience. It's basically in first gear, so now the light's green. In first gear, it's like an on and off switch and you really have to get used to it. Yeah, I mean, it's very twitchy. So with the automatic transmission, you do get the Tiptronic shifting ability on the steering wheel. It is not paddles. This is a 2007 base Cayman. It's not the Cayman S, but you do have the plus and minus here. And you know what? It's actually not that bad. I mean, I would obviously prefer if this was a manual transmission car, but having the Tiptronic with the plus and minus there, it's right at your fingertips, and honestly, I'm having a lot of fun. It does not feel like an auto necessarily, especially with the ECU flash and the ability to tune the throttle response to your liking. Another really cool thing you'll notice about the Cayman is you look behind you and it just reminds you of like a Ferrari or something, like a 458 or an F430, that you look back there and there's a clear cover over the engine bay. That is really cool, and another big difference that separates this from the MR2 is, I mean, the engine noise when you're in here, when you downshift, is absolutely phenomenal. You hear all the kind of inner workings, you hear the very minute details of the engine back there working its magic right behind your ear. It's phenomenal. So 260 horsepower isn't all that much, but in a base Cayman, what you're really getting for this is the balance and the handling. But even still, from a dig, it's not a slow car. There we are at 100 kilometers an hour, 120. It's definitely quick enough, but I could see for sure if you were on the open road or in some bigger sweepers, I could see you wanting more power for sure. It's not going to scare you in the power department, but what it is going to really surprise you in is power delivery. And to me, just kind of building up my Porsche experience, that is really where Porsche shines, is power delivery. Their cars just feel so natural, and you think you get in some really nice cars, and you're like, okay, this is a really good feeling car. And then you get in a Porsche, and you feel like, okay, no, this is how it should be. If you had a picture in your mind of just kind of a perfect driving car, or as close to perfect as you can kind of get, most Porsches definitely fall into that category, and the Cayman is absolutely no exception. So the weird thing is, you really don't feel the weight of the car. I mean, this is a fairly light car to begin with, but you don't feel the weight of the car at all. It feels completely natural, completely planted, and it's very much at ease with whatever you want to throw at it. Long sweepers, tight hairpins. You can feel the back end stepping out very progressively when it decides to do that. But let me tell you, the steering, the Cayman steering, before they went all electric power steering on us and made automotive journalists that have driven those cars just hate life. I mean, the steering rack is phenomenal. It's extremely progressive. It's right on center. Here we are catching a Porsche 997 Carrera, who is absolutely not driving his car to the fullest, I would just say. So let me tell you what I'm feeling difference-wise between this and the couple of Porsche 911s I've driven. The weight is the biggest difference. Basically, you're not feeling the weight shift around as much as you would expect. When you're in a 911, you have a lot more to think about in terms of weight balance when you're gonna brake. I mean, you can basically just toss this in to a corner. It's much more forgiving, a lot more forgiving. Cup holders over here that slide out from the glove box, albeit much better designed than the Subaru Forester we brought over from Japan. You have a very straight up gauge cluster right here. You've got the tach in front of you. You've got clearly your speedo. It is in miles per hour. This is an American car that was brought over to Canada. Obviously, you've got the classic Porsche ignition on the left side. You've basically got a really basic layout in the center here. There's nothing crazy about it. Dare I say it already kind of feels dated. I mean, the car's almost 10 years old at this point, but that is the only thing that feels dated. This car feels new as ever. It's relatively low kilometers. It's got 66,000 kilometers on it. A very clean example.
Your lips, they tasted like those cigarettes. Staring at the moon, we'd go to bed. In my arms, you're safe and sound, without a threat. And I can't wait to see what happens next. How far can we get if we sail a little bit high, a little bit low?
So this is a 2.6 liter flat six, obviously naturally aspirated. The more bare bones that Porsche gets with their engines like this, you get into a base Cayman, the more reliable they're going to be, the more bulletproof they're going to be. I mean, not necessarily, but just kind of as a general rule, there's less stress when you've got less than 300 horsepower. But the power band is where this engine really shines, and all Porsches for that matter. You have to keep this engine above 3,000. You absolutely cannot go below 3,000. Obviously, if you're cruising, that's a different story. But when you're driving, and you even want a little bit of power and torque to get past someone, you definitely want to kick down and use the top half of the rev range. Red line is up at 7,000 RPM, so nothing crazy, but high enough that you get between 5,500 and 7 grand. This engine just wakes up. It's a whole different character. Even downshifts with the automatic, they're definitely delayed. I mean, this is 2007 we're talking here. It works though. And just throwing it back again to coming to this shoot, driving my MR2 hard on this exact same very road and stepping in this, there is absolutely no comparison. This is like the MR2 jacked up times 100. The steering is a lot sharper. The grip is phenomenal. But at the same time, you can use the same techniques and the same habits that I would use in the MR2, you can still use those here, and they work fairly well. You just learn that you have a lot more grip to play with, and a lot better sound, that's for sure. This car sounds the business, 100%. Quiet it down for this old man. Just gave us the finger. Okay, so final thoughts. Coming from the MR2, this is, like I said before, it's the MR2 times 100, but it's got definitely a lot of different feelings about it. All good feelings. The steering is sharper, it's tighter, it's a little bit heavier, but at the same time, it's still got the characteristics you want out of a mid-engine car. It honestly just puts a smile on your face in every way. It doesn't need 354, 500 horsepower in this car to make it fun. I had such a blast in this car. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. New videos every single Tuesday and Thursday. If you haven't already, go subscribe to the Roads Untraveled podcast, which we put out every single Wednesday on iTunes, Shout Engine, and Stitcher. We'll see you next time.